Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Live from Park City, Utah. Be'ez Hashem, the final shir from Park City, Utah of this season. And the final shir for today. This is shir number 4. 4 shiurim, a tremendous shukayach to Mark Ashkenazi, who is with me for all 4 shiurim, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening. The idea is to have shiurim ready for the 3-day yontif so that the new guys that come in for Makis, they shouldn't fall behind on day 1, and they should have enough shiurim to go through yontif. They should be able to watch it erev yontif. Rabbi Isai, there's only 2 days left to the Masechta. Only 2 days. And I know some of you haven't brought anybody. You hear about it. You think about it. Come on. Get out of your comfort zone. Get off your chair. Pick up the phone. Go get somebody. Go chap a yid for Torah. So far, many new guys are joining, and you could be part of this. It's a revolution. It's bringing people to Torah. I want to show you something. This is something you don't see in America. Only in Eretz Yisrael. One of a kind. Check out this picture. I have to explain it. If you look closely, you'll see there's a green walking sign. In other words, this delivery guy is at a red light and decided to use his time at the red light wisely. And he's watching the shear. Let me show you. Somebody saw him. He's watching the shear at the stoplight. Incredible picture. The delivery guy. Okay, that's one. Very interesting. Today, after giving 2 shiurim, I went to meet my family. They all went out to ski. And Baruch Hashem, I have to think, 3 days. I went skiing, and Baruch Hashem, no injuries, no falls, my legs held out, my bad knee, my bad hip. Oh, Chesed Hashem. Didn't feel a thing. Gewaldig. I see a guy, a yeshiva guy, sitting there with a yarmulke. So I said hello to him. He says, Eli Stefansky. I said, yeah. He says, you're not going to believe it. And here he is. He says over the story on video. Check this out. Mark, we have some volume over here. The boy say, look who I met over here. What's your name?
Sandy Klein. Shalom Aleichem.
What'd you say?
I said, I listened to the Daf by Eli for the first time today on the plane.
First time ever?
First time ever. It was special.
It's a kiss from Hashem. And all of a sudden now, I meet him. I said hello. I see a guy with a yarmulke sitting around.
I see you guys.
Did you ski already?
I didn't ski up. Like,
what are you doing? Why didn't you go skiing?
I have to get my stuff. No,
but you learned the Daf. You learned the Daf. What Masechta? What Masechta did you learn? Eruvin.
Dirshu.
Wow, cool. All right. So he's learning with Dirshu Eruvin. And hold it. 1 minute. We got to show the next one. And so he decided to watch MDY. Today was the first time he ever watched it on the plane. And he bumps into me. I think it's a very interesting thing. The Seder. Next one. This guy. Good morning, Rabbi Isai.
Maddie's The moment. Revolutionary care straight to your couch. Servicing Bar Park, Crown Heights, Williamsburg, upstate New York, and now starting a new Masechta. Muncie.
Rabbi Isai, the Siyum for Sanhedrin in Toronto, mdytoronto.com. And you can find your local Siyum at mdysiyum.com. All the Siyumim in Muncie, in Brooklyn, and Toronto, and everywhere else in the world should be on mdy.com, mdysiyum.com. Let's see what do we have here. Oh, I think it's kedai to speak about this again. It's been a while since I've written this. Today marks the second yard side of our dear Chaver Menachem Toporovich Olav Shalom, and I felt compelled to reach out. As you know, Menachem was truly a remarkable person, humble, sincere, and deeply connected to Torah. What most people, including yourself, only discovered after his passing was just how much he quietly supported MDY. His love for Torah and his appreciation for what you have built was genuine and sincere. I wanted to share the backstory of how Menachem became connected to MDY. I was in Eretz Yisrael over Thanksgiving weekend about 2.5 years ago and had arranged with my friend Eli Cherns to attend your live share. When Menachem overheard us, he expressed interest in coming to the live share. The next morning, I came early to pick him up from his hotel, but he couldn't find his tefillin. Time was running out, and he urged us not to wait for him. But we told him, if you're not coming, we're not going. A few minutes later, Baruch Hashem, he found them, and off we went. Baruch Hashem, we made it just in time. He absolutely loved the Yeshir. What he didn't tell us then, or even really, or ever really, was that he would go on to sponsor hundreds of Gemaras. He never sought recognition or honor. That simply wasn't who he was. He was a tzaddik nifter in the truest sense. Eli and I don't share this to take any credit. Menachem did it all. But like you always say, if you bring one person to the daf, you never know what could come from it. You hear that? If you bring one person to the daf, the one that I can remember is Benny Rudnick. One person to the daf. But you never know. It might be the Yossi Klein. It might be the Mark Ashkenazi. Yeshua Enterprise brought Mark Ashkenazi to the daf. You never know. And Yona Rothman brought Menachem Toporovitz. Menachem was that person because his deep love for Torah, countless others have learned, grown, and connected to the daf. This is just one facet of what made Menachem so special. His presence is missed every single day, and his memory remains so vivid for all who knew him. May the neshama of Menachem Mendel ben Rabbi Shua Dov have an aliyah from all the Torah that continues to be learned in his chus, and from the lives he touched so quietly and so powerfully. What's amazing, and I'm going to say this again, he gave hundreds of Gemaras without having that kind of money. When he was nifter, it was known later that he didn't have all that, but he gave and he gave because he wanted to give. You're Yedid, Yoiner Rothman, he is my Yedid. I know him since my days in Chaim, Berlin. We played basketball a lot together in Camp Maris. You remember those nights at 1, 2 in the morning with the lights and barely seeing this dirt and would slip over there. Very good times. Let's go. We'll jump into it. Why not? Okay. Oh, I have to do the sponsors. Jumping into it is not going to work right now. The Masechta is sponsored by Shmuel ben Chana Ettel. Rabbi say these are the last days for these Masechta sponsors. I'm curious to know who's sponsoring Masechta Smakas. The Lirfo name is Shmuel ben Chaya Hendel and Yosef Chaim Shmuel ben Alte Nechama by the grateful family. Anonymous for the Hatzlacha Baruch Nissim ובגשמיות. Larry Cohn. In memory of Yechiel Moshe Ben Chaim, who started learning Daf Yomi at age 70 and continued for 32 years until he was nifter. Anonymous for the unity of the Jewish people. Glenn Esterson. With love and gratitude from Wilmington, North Carolina. Thank you for enriching my life with Torah. The monthly sponsors by ActualEyes, Hatzlacha B'Parnasa, and Parnasa Birevach for Baruch, Tzvi, Nissim, Ben, Shoshana, Leah. Parnasa Chodesh for the Kollel. Thank you to R Eli's wife and kids for the great sacrifices they make, allowing him to spread Torah to the masses. Thank you. Daily sponsors, Edward Galster, in loving memory of Chaya Hendel, Bas Yaakov Aleh Shalom, for Neshama should have an Aliyah. Frank Rubin, wishing Elisha Rubin much Hatzlacha on his new business, Rubin Legacy Financial. MDY Kids Monthly, Innovations, Chus for Fishel, Elchanan, Akiva, Rifki, and Mrs. Stefansky. Art of the Month, for Shlema, for Yonatan Eitan Ben Basheva Bracha, for Schus, for Belly and the whole MDY staff to continue to make Torah yourself enjoy for so many, and in honor of Yossi Klein and Mark Ashkenazi for all the work they do. Rabbi Sai, here we go. Here's the question. We're holding Daf Kufyud Beis, Amud Aleph. Question. 2 people are about to walk into shul. There's only room for one person to fit through the door. Who goes first? The guy wearing tefillin on his head and on his arm, or the guy holding a tefillin bag? There is halachas of Gedima. Who should go first? First thought comes to mind, the guy that's wearing the tefillin on his head. Guy wearing tefillin on his head, he's like more kaddish, has more kedusha. He should go in first. Let's say somebody's holding a sefer Torah. He should go in before a person without a sefer Torah. But the Beis Halevi says not like that. He proves it from our sugya. So let's see. We have some super interesting sugyas about shaitels, about this idea of tefillin. We're taking it out from this whole shaitel business, but many other Yishmakas sugyas as well. Ibaylu. We are in the midst of the sugya of Ir Nidachas. Ir Nidachas is a city that the majority of the inhabitants of the city, 51%, let's call them, worship Avodah Zarah. And they have a special halacha, they all die with the sword, which is not as bad as dying with skila, that if an individual would do it, he would die with skila. However, what's very bad about it is that all their belongings go up in flames. We burn it all. The Mishnah told us that in order for this to happen, you need somebody to convince the entire city. And that someone has to be from the city and from the same shevet. What if nobody convinced them? They just convinced themselves. Seems like from the Mishnah, they wouldn't be chayav. But the Gemara asked the question, Ibaylu, what if they convinced themselves to worship the Avodah Zarah? Didn't have anybody to be mediach them. Somebody convinced them to do wrong, and not if it happened by themselves. Or perhaps even if they convince themselves that they're also considered Ir Nidachas. Tashma, we could prove it. It says in the Mishnah that if women or children are the ones that did the convincing, it's not counted as anything. Just pretend they don't exist at all, and then it's as if they convince themselves. And you see from here that if you convince yourself, it's nothing. Says the Gemara, no. When women and children convince, it's worse. Why? When a person convinces himself, he's sticking to it. He's much stronger in it. And therefore, he should be Ir Nidachas. But the other people, they were convinced by women and children, so their conviction to the Avodah Zarah is less, so perhaps they're not considered Ir Nidachas. We saw in the Mishnah, it's a sugya after sugya, small sugyas and geshmaka stuff. We saw that in order to be Ir Nidachas, you have to have the majority of the city should be doing Avodah Zarah. Says Gemara, how exactly does this work? You come into a city, there's 100,000 people. 51,000 people are doing Avodah Zarah. So you grab one, you bring to Bezdin, and what? He's an individual. He's not a full city. He's not a majority of a city. So what do? So you have to bring all 51,000 people to Bezdin the same day. It's almost impossible. So you do this over a few weeks. So now you gave this guy judgment, and now he has to wait with his judgment until he gets the penalty. It could be a few weeks, a few months. That's not fair. That's giving him extra pay. We learned in this Masechta that if you judge somebody to the death penalty, you kill him right away. You judge the person, you put him in jail. You judge another person until you have 51,000 people in jail, then you take them all and you kill them. Comes out that you're torturing these people for a long time. They know that they're going to die. They're on death row, and they're not dead. They need to be killed right away. So what's Ula's advice? You treat each individual as an individual, and the individual that does Avodah Zarah, he gets skila, not sayif, which the Ir Nidachas gets skila. Until you get to a point where you killed the majority of the city, you killed 51,000 people with skila, then 51,001, that guy is part of the Ir Nidachas and he gets sayif. Rabbi agrees to this. Rosh Lakish has another idea. Let's put, you have 51,000 people, so bring 150,000 dayanim, make 50,000 bati dinim, and you could judge all of them in one shot. As the Gemara, that's impossible. You should remove that person, that woman, that child, that man, that woman. You only take one individual to the gates of your city. And what do we have in the gates of the city? A bezin of 23. But when you're dealing with the Ir Nidachas, then you don't bring them to the city gate. You have to bring them to Yerushalayim, to the Hamikdash, where you have a Sanhedrin of 71. So what are you telling me? You're going to bring 150,000 dayanim and you're going to make a crazy amount of bati dinim? No. You need one bezdin. It's called the Sanhedrin of 71. They have to deal with it. So then Then we have the same question. How are you gonna judge so many people with one bezin of 71? If you judge one at a time, then you're being ma'anad the din, you're causing them a lot of torture. Elo says, you get a lot of bati dinim, and they look at it. They see what should we do over here. And then afterwards, then once they know what to do, they bring everybody to the 71 bezin. We even have a picture that, I don't know if you remember that sugya, but everybody he moved down the line. It was gewaldige stuff. Let me see. Then that whole row moves over, but I don't think we have it here. Okay. Hakisakis Yeshveir, new sugya. It says in the Mishnah that if you don't have a majority of people that do have a desire, but then a bunch of camel drivers came into the city and they stayed there, they slept there, they become part of the city and they could influence the majority either to say the majority does have a desire, or let's say the camel drivers are people that don't do have a desire, they could influence the majority that the majority of the city does not do have a desire. Nobody died. It's not a year in Dachas. You have these people on camels, on donkeys, they go from place to place. If they slept in the city, and they did have a desire with the city, if they were in the city for 30 days, then they become an ir in Dachas. The halacha of ir in Dachas is everybody gets the sword and you burn all their belongings. But if it's less than 30 days, then we treat them as individuals, which is their misa is skila, and their belongings survive. They don't get the burning penalty. You don't burn it. Ask the Gemara, you're telling me it's 30 days. I have another source that tells me it's 12 months. Where in Baba Basra? How long do you have to stay in a city to be chayiv, to have to pay the local taxes and everything else that the city pays? Yud Beis Chodesh is 12 months. So how can we say it's 30 days when the Gemara in Baba Basra says in order to be part of the city, you have to be there for 12 months? Omar Ravali Kashio, it's not shver. Halim heavy mibnei masa. Check out the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Haki saka, es yoshvei ha'ir ahi lefi charev." You have to be a dweller in the city, a yoshev ha'ir. You don't have to be a citizen of the city. You have to be a dweller of the city. You come to a place like Park City, Utah, and you sit here for 3-4 days in a hotel. You're not a yoshev ha'ir. You give it 30 days, then you're a yoshev ha'ir. You live here permanently. You become a citizen of the city. That's 12 months. Then you become a citizen. So for certain things, all you need is a yoshev ha'ir, and certain things you need to be a ezrach ha'ir. You want to be a citizen? Then you have to spend 12 months there. It reminds me, Taka, like people that run away from New York to Florida for taxes. So there's a certain amount of days they have to be in Florida in order to be considered a citizen of Florida. You can't just show up there in the summer for 3 days or yeshiva week and say, "Oh, I live in Florida." They check your flights, they check your credit cards, and they know what they're doing. You got to be careful. People that do this, they tell me, "No, I can't come to the bar mitzvah because I have to be a certain amount of days in Boca or whatever it is that these people live in to save the taxes." So the Gemara says, "Holim havim miyas," and there's mamish taxes here. We're talking about taxes here. Holim havim miyas ve'imasa. But if you want to live there, just to be to be a citizen, you just want to live there. Living is 30 days. So the Ramah, this is Nagel in Yonah, the Ramah, who's a Rav in the city, so when he starts off the halachas of Pesach, he starts off right away with Kimcha de Pischa, the money that you're supposed to give the poor people for Pesach. And he says, when are you obligated to give? He says, if you live in a city for 12 months, then you're obligated to give. And when are you eligible to receive? You're poor and you want to receive the Kimcha B'Ischa. You have to live in the city for 12 months. You can't just show up to a wealthy city and say, "Oh, I'm a resident of the city. Shalom Aleichem." You come from Yerushalayim, you come to Monsey, you say, "I'm a resident of Monsey." No, you just got off the plane. You have to live there for 12 months. However, there's an interesting halacha. If a person purchases a house in a city, then it starts immediately. Then you become part of the city. Then you chayev the pischa the first day. And if you purchase a house and you're poor, you could also receive the kimcha the pischa right away. The Mishnah though says that one should be makbid even 30 days based on this Gemara. I guess the Ramah is also basing on the Gemara here. 12 months, 30 days. The Mishnah says, but let's be makbid on 30 days. If you're in a city for 30 days, you should start paying up the local kimcha de pischa fund. Vatanya, and I'll prove to you. B'nichusa, you have to read it. This is not a question. This is an answer. This is a raya, not an answer, but a proof to exactly what we said. There's a difference between 12 months and 30 days. Somebody says, I will not benefit. I make a neder. I won't benefit from anybody that lives in Bet Shemesh. If a person lives in Bet Shemesh for 12 months, this individual who said he's mudahana from that city can't benefit from him. But if the guy lived in Bet Shemesh less than 12 months, he could benefit from him. But if that's because he said Bnei Ha'ir. Ben Ha'ir, city dweller, that's 12 months. But if he says the lashon of Yoshvei Ha'ir, similar to the pasuk that we have over here, Hakisake is Yoshvei Ha'ir, that's only in the Shtar Shleishim Yoi. Mamish like our sugi. There's a difference between 12 months and 30 days, depending if you're talking about a Yoshev or a Ben Ha'ir. Then the shear is 30 days. Hachar Moisav is Kol Asher Ba. Hachar Moisav is Kol Asher Ba. This just reminds me that I was in a certain country and I didn't want to tell people where I was, and I was drinking the water bottle and it was a funny label, and they took the label and they figured out that I was in Africa. Something like that. Hachar Moisav ve'es Kol Asher Ba. Tana Rabban. If you have a tzaddik who lives in the Ir Hanidachas and he doesn't do Avodah Zarah, and he has possessions outside of the city, they don't get burned. But all the possessions that are inside the city, his car, his washing machine, everything gets burned. How do we know this? From a pasuk. Everything that's in the city, but not stuff that's outside the city. What about the Russia that did Avodah Zarah and he has stuff outside the city? That we'll see. That is burnt. But Kol Asher Ba, everything that's inside the Ir Hanidachas has to get burnt, even though it's the belongings of a tzaddik. Why? He didn't do Avodah Zarah. The Gemara is going to explain. That we saw that anything that's Hegdish and something like that, Meiser, Bchar, all these things, Meiser Sheni, that you don't burn. That's called shlala. We'll have a sugi about that. That's called shlala. The rabbis nichse rishon shechutzala. That's called shlala means even if a rasha that does Avodah Zarah for minadachas and he has stuff outside of the city, you have to burn that as well. Says Rashi, this is the famous Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon Ba'Yochai is Dorish time of the crop. Today it's very in. To try to understand the mitzvahs. Why did Hashem say this mitzvah, say that mitzvah? People come up with all sorts of weird stuff. But Rabbi Shimon says, look, certain things I could understand. Why did the Torah say that a tzaddik's belongings have to be burned? I'll tell you why. Why is it tzaddik living in the Ir Hanidachas? Mamaynam. He went to the Ir Hanidachas to get a shtela, to get a job, to get money. He was driven by money. So the money is going to get burnt. We said that belongings of the Russia that are outside the city, those get burnt. Provided that you could gather it quickly and easily and bring it into the city. In other words, if the Ir Hanidachas is in America, well, it has to be in Israel, but okay, let's say it's in Israel. It's next to Bet Shemesh, and the guy's belongings are in Africa. So we don't say, oh, go to Africa, bring the stuff, and let's burn it. If it's next door in Bet Shemesh, well, you take it and you bring it. Omer Rav Chizda. Shel Anshi Ir Hanidachas Mutarim. Deposits. What halacha does a deposit have? Now, it depends whose deposit it is. So that's the Gemara is going to discuss. If the Ir Hanidachas receive deposits, let's say they're a bank and they receive deposits, it's not their money. They're holding on to somebody else's money. So why should it be burnt? But let's say Ir Hanidachas gave deposits to another city. Shouldn't that be burnt? As long as it's, we just said, provided that it's close to the city, it's not in Africa, it's close by. Why shouldn't it be burnt? So that's exactly what the Gemara is going to say. You don't have to burn it. What's the case? They received a deposit from another city. It's not their money to be burnt. They're just doing somebody a favor, whatever. They're holding on to somebody else's money. It's not theirs to be burnt. But you're going to say, no, this is Ir Nidachas money. And they deposited in another city. Maybe they were smart. They didn't want it to be burnt, so they put it in another city. If it could easily be brought into the Ir Nidachas, why should it be mutar? And if not, we already said this halacha. We're talking about another city, put money into the Ir Nidachas and ask them to hold on to it. In the Kabbalah the Ir Nidachas, they had a special, what is it called, FDIC, they guarantee everything. If something's stolen and lost, they will guarantee it. Now, the special halacha, it's interesting because this is also in Yonah Deyayma. If a non-Jew deposits chametz, he says, hold on to these 10 pies of pizza for me. And the Jew takes responsibility, says, if it's stolen, I will pay for it. So halachically, it's considered the Jew's pizza. And he's over on the Isra of chametz. Same thing over here. I would think that the Ir Nidachas, they took a responsibility on this deposit, and they're saying, look, if something happens to it, I will pay for it. So then it says, if it's theirs, if it's theirs, they should have to, you should have to burn it. While the same given the Kabbalah Achrayis, it's literally like as if it's owned by the Ir Nidachas. Kamash want to know. Fascinating stuff coming up here. If you have an animal, let's say 2 people own a car rental place, and in the car rental place they rent the local, whatever they had in those days. They used to rent animals, so they own an animal as partners. One guy is the Ir Nidachas person, and everything that he owns has to be burned, and one guy is a regular nice guy. Asura, this animal is asur ba'ana, you can't do anything with it. Isa, let's say 2 partners own a matzah bakery. One guy is the Ir Nidachas guy, and one guy is Shemi Braun. What do you do with the dough? Isa, chetzi shel Ir Nidachas, chetzi shel Ir acheres, mutares. Only half of it is going to be mutar. The kosher half is mutar. My timer. Behema kemandele pligadamya. So this is very deep, says Rashi. In order to eat an animal, in order to make an animal kosher, you have to shecht it. But if you have to kill this animal, so the shechita is not a shechita. On that half, it's not a shechita. That half, it's killing it. So you didn't shecht this animal. You only shechted half the animal. You can't eat a half animal, this half shechted animal. That's what Rashi learns it. However, but when it comes to dough in a matzah bakery, commanded pligadam. Why can't you divide the dough 50-50? I don't have to shecht something. Shechting, you can't shecht half a shechita. You have to go through the simanim completely. But by dough, I could say this half, the right half, is the Ir Nidachas half, and the left half is the good guy's half. But how can I do that? It's all mixed in together. So for that, we have to come on to the famous concept called Brera, retroactive clarification, which tells us that when I divide the dough 50-50, the right part goes to the Ir Nidachas, the left part goes to the good guy. That's how it was established. That's what the breakup, maybe is the word. That's what the division happened from day one when you mix the dough. That's what it was. Now that I break it in half, I retroactively understand that that's exactly what the partnership was. Says the Gemara, another question. Okay, so before we start the Shiloh, we have to understand, this is very important. If an animal drops dead, a cow drops dead, or is shot in the head, is killed by a car, then its body emits a tumah. If you touch it, you become tummy. If you shecht an animal, and it's dead, obviously after you shecht it, it does not emit a tumah. It doesn't have tumas nevelo. If it dies on its own, there's tumas nevelo. As Rav Chizda, a very interesting question. This Irani Dachas animal, which is destined to die, you have to burn it, you have to kill it with a sword. What if you don't kill it with a sword? What if you shechted it? Could that shchita remove the tumah of the nevelo? You're right, you can't eat it. Now we established you can't eat it. But perhaps it's good enough to take away the tumah. Where Rav Chizda behemes Irani Dachas ma'ut the tisani ba shchita l'tahara medei nevela. Does it remove the tumah of the nevela? Lefi charev amar Achmona lo yishna shachat hamishchat lo yishna kat migdal. Doesn't the Torah says to kill it with a sword? So what's the difference if you kill it with a sword in its heart or its neck? You killed it. If you kill it, it's considered a dead animal and it should have tumah. Or perhaps no, since you shafted it helps that there's no tumah. Teigu, I don't know. I don't have an answer to the kasha, says the Gemara. A lot of people are going to love this sugya. By Rav Yosef. Sar ben Oshim. We have Sar Noshim Tzidkoni Yismau. You have a woman who's a tzaddik, doesn't do avodah, she lives in Ir and Dachas. Do I have to burn her hair right off her head? Or what? You have to burn hair off a woman who does avodah? That makes no sense. Why does it make sense? Tikboitz v'saraftiksiv. You should gather things and burn them. There's 2 steps. Gather and burn. But this has 3 steps. Cut the hair, gather, and burn. We're talking about a sheitel. Wow. So Gemara says that women used to wear sheitels. Rashi explains, you take somebody else's hair and you add it to your hair, it fills up the hair. Maybe they're not talking about covering hair completely, but there's an idea of a peir nachris, of a wig that's from somebody else's hair. Says Gemara Chidami, how does this wig look like? Not how does it look like, but what's going on here? If this woman is wearing it, then it's like she's wearing clothing. You don't ask a woman to take the clothing and burn them. Whatever's on her is safe. So if she's wearing a sheitel, it's safe. You don't have to burn it. Then why would you have to burn it? Says the Gemara, Moirdik. Leitzricha de toli besiftecha. Yeah, is that the word here? I can't read it. Besifta. She's not wearing the sheitel. The sheitel is on a sheitel head, on a peg somewhere. So what's the sheitel? Do we consider it like any other belonging of a tzaddik that's inside there any dachas, and you must burn it? This is something that she constantly takes on and off, on and off, on and off. So therefore, it's as if it's on her, even though it's on a peg. Kilavusha adami, teiku. So I don't know. So going back to the question I asked before, what happened? Who has gedima? Who's more chashav? A person that's wearing tefillin, he should go into shul first, or a person that's holding tefillin's bag. Over here, it seems like, says the Beis Halevi, that a person who's wearing tefillin, it's like part of your body. Just like you don't burn clothes off a person's body, you don't burn a sheitel. Oh, I forgot to show you this picture. You don't burn a sheitel off their head. So tefillin on somebody's head is part of their body. So he doesn't have Gdima. This person doesn't have Gdima. But tefillin in a bag does have Gdima. Interesting. This is a tzaddikas with her sheitel, and this is a rishayis with her sheitel, or her hair. There's a story that I said over, and after I said the story, David Feinberg said, I know this woman, she's best friends with my wife, and the story is a little different, and I forgot how he corrected the story. I'm just going to say the way, maybe this is the corrected version, I don't know. There's a woman who was minding her own business in a bank, and there was a bank robbery. And they pushed the button, and the cops showed up. And the guy panicked, the bank robber panicked, and he grabs this frum lady. And he put a gun to her head, and he threatened the cops, he's going to kill her, etc., etc. And he grabs her, and he's like trying to get her into a car, and he grabs her by her hair, and he puts her in the car. So she ducked. Basically, her sheitel stayed in the guy's hand, and she kind of moved, and he's shocked. And that was basically his last thought, because as soon as he paused for a second, the cop shot him up. I guess his thought was, how in the world did her hair stay in my hand and her head is somewhere else? But this is a Ma'aseh Shaya. Says the Gemara, what if the city doesn't have a square and there's nowhere to put all the stuff that we're talking about? Shmuel says this can no longer be Ir Nidachas. If there's no town square, here, Rabbi Isai, take a look at what the town square looks like. Oops. Put everything in the center, and you burn it. And what remains from it? Boom. Okay. So, what's the source of the machlokes? One man says that the center of the city means that it was there before the whole thing started. Rabbi Kiva says no. As long as you make one afterwards, as long when you burn it, you made a center. Great. Amud Beis, and that is sponsored by. We have a new sponsor. I heard. Turning of the daf. Oh, I see the new sponsor on the bottom. Adar Global, one-stop shop for all your financial needs. Innovations LLC in honor of our sons Kalmo 12 and Yisrael 9 for learning Sanhedrin with Rebelli. So proud of you. In honor of Adar Global and Innovations, true role models of how to support the daf and learning. I'm curious to know which Cheverman put this new sponsorship in. Now, Amud Beis on top. Boys, I'm going to go a few words in so that you can't skip around over here. V'hekdesh sheba yipadu. Tonu rabbanan. Oh, so now they said those two words. Don't forget to bring your friend, to convince somebody to join the daf. It will change your life. By you convincing him, your life will change. Why? Azoyas, when you get somebody to do better with his life, you feel better about yourself, and Hashem feels better about you, and everything is great. Tanu Rabbanan. Hayuba Kachim. What if in the city of the Erni Dachas there's a few animals ready to go to the Mizbeach? Kachim Mizbeach Yemusu. There's no choice, but you have to let them die. You can't put them on a Mizbeach. Why? Because it's not proper to bring an animal that comes from Erni Dachas, the Mizbeach. It's a Tayeva, it's an abomination. On the other side, you can't burn it because it's Hegdish. It belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. So what do? So the halacha is, Yamusu, you let them die. But if it's designated for the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash, you redeem it with money. Utrumas yirakvu, and if somebody designated some fruit for the Kohen, gave it to the Kohen, it must spoil. And the 10% that you give to yourself in years 1, 2, 4, 5, they have to be buried, and so too Sifrei Torah. Reb Shimon Omer, Behemta v'lo behemes b'char meiser u'meiser. When the Torah says behemta, you should burn all the animals, it means not a b'char, not the firstborn animal that you give to the kohen, and not meiser behema. What's meiser behema? So you take all your animals, you put them in a pen, and you count 1, 2, 3, until 10 come out. Number 10, you take that paintbrush, whatever you have in your hand, it's full of red dye, and you slap it on the back of the sheep or the goat or whatever animal it is, and here it is, boom, and that guy is Meiser. Meiser Behema has a kedusha. Shlala, prat lekesef hekdesh, v'kesef Meiser. The word shlala, you take all the loot from your Dachs and you burn it, but not money that belongs to the Beis Hamikdash and money that you redeemed, your Meiser Sheni, all your fruit that you can't carry up to the Beis Hamikdash because it's too heavy for you. You trade it in for cash, that you don't burn. If it belongs to the Mizbeach, it should die. So this is the question now for a bit, until, well, not so long, just 10 lines or so. Ask the Gemara, why should it die? I have a better idea. There's a concept called Giru Achi Stavu. You let an animal graze on its own, you don't take any care of it, and you hope that it trips one day, breaks its leg, it becomes a balmum, and then you're able to redeem it. Because up until that point, it belongs to the Mizbeach, you can't redeem it. What's the big deal? Let it befall a mum, and then you take the money, and it becomes money for the Beis Hamikdash, becomes in a dava. So we have a number of reasons here. Even the money that you get off of selling this damaged animal is still an abomination. The money itself is gross. Some yeshivas won't take money from certain individuals, certain organizations, or we won't say on YouTube what it is. Loy mishaluni money. It comes from different places. I'm not taking. It's an abomination. No, the reason why you can't. The reason why you let it die is because it's considered the money that's owned by the owner. And we're talking about, says Rish Lakish, these are kachim that a person says, I am dedicating this animal to the Beis Hamikdash, and you took responsibility. If something happens to it, you are responsible to replace it. Reb Shimoni, and this goes according to Reb Shimon, which the Gemara is going to ask in a second. It can't be Reb Shimon because the continuation is Reb Shimon. So this part is certainly not Reb Shimon. Reb Shimoni, the Amar Mamim Ba'alam. Reb Shimon says that that's considered the money that's owned by the owner. How about the say Reb Shimoni, but that can't be because later on it says from here on out is Reb Shimon, meaning the first part is not Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon. Okay. So Nupshat, according to Rish Lakish. Ela b'kachim kalim. There are two categories when it comes to korbanos. This is the heavy-duty korbanos, like a chatas, a asham, and there's the lighter ones, a chatas, oila, asham. The chatas part of you could only eat inside the Beis Hamikdash. Oila you can't eat at all. But when it comes to kachim kalim, we have a b'char, we have a taida, a oila, Korban Pesach. So these are the lighter category. You can eat it throughout all of Yerushalayim. Vali b'der Lili. Lili says these lighter korbanos, dama kachim kalam, mavim bailam. That's considered yours. Oh, it's yours. We gotta get rid of it. Why? Because you're part of your nidachas. But you're telling me that if it's the severe, the heavy category, chatos, yipadu, you should redeem it. Don't let it die. If that's the case, so now we have a distinction. If it's kachi kalim, yemusu. If it's kachi kachim, yipadu. Okay? But that's not what it says. We say, if it's kachi kalim, yipadu. Yemusu. And if it's for the bedek habayis, we jump to something completely different. Bedek habayis, taking care of the Beis Hamikdash. Why don't you focus on korbanos? There's two types of korbanos: the kachim kalim, make a distinction within the karbanos themselves. Why are you jumping to another category of bedek habayis? Aditani sefer kachi bedek habayis yipadu. If it's for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, you should redeem it. You should talk about karbanos themselves and make a distinction within karbanos. When do you let it die? But if it's the heavy category, you should redeem it. Says Gemara, no, you can't do that. Why? Because it's not a one rule fits all. If you can say one rule, the kachim, the halacha is yipadu, you should redeem. Great. That includes the oila, chatos, the asham, everything. The problem is that when it comes to chatos, you cannot redeem it. Why? Because here is the famous 5 chatos. If you want to remember all 5, the word v'timna. First one is vlad chatos, tmuras chatos, and here the center one is what we're talking about. Chatos shemesu b'oleh. If a person, let's say, was Machal Shabbos and he designated an animal to be a chatos, but he didn't go to the Beis Hamikdash, he's waiting to, for Pesach, he's going to go with his whole family, Aliyah l'regel, he'll bring the carbon then. And what happened was, he was nifter, he died. So the halacha is that his chatas that he set aside and designated, it must die. It's a very sad thing. You take the chatas, you put it in a room, you don't feed it until it dies. So Mamela, since he's part of Yerhani Dachas, he's a dead man. A dead man's chatas must die. So you cannot give me one rule fits all that if it's kachim, you should redeem it. No, here's one kachim called the chatas, which you don't redeem. It must die. So it's not a good. That's why I'm going to jump to another category of bedek habayis and not talk about kachim. Says when we asked before, how come this animal has to die? Why can't they redeem it? So Rabbi Yochanan said, because it's a te'eva, it's an abomination. So the reason why Rabbi Yochanan didn't say it's an abomination, and that includes everything, kachim, kalim, everything. Even the money that you redeem, everything's abomination according to Rabbi Yochanan. I don't understand why Rish Lakish has to go on to another reason. Just it's a beautiful reason. It's an abomination to bring anything. That's why it must die. You can't redeem it. No, I disagree, he says. You know why it's not Zevach Sham Te'eva? Because you switched it to money. This animal is an abomination. This animal came from Yerhani Dachas. But if you take this animal and you switch it out to money, there's no connection anymore. It's something else. It's no longer an animal. It's money. Ishtani. So it's different. You want to show me over here? Oh, if it has a mum. Let's see if there's anything else interesting here. Nope. Okay. One more piece, and that's it for today. Reb Shimon says the word in the Torah, you should kill all animals. That does not include, you should not kill the firstborn and the 10th one that came out of the gate, the meiser. If these animals are whole, and therefore you can bring them to the Beis Hamikdash, shlal shamayim, then you don't even own it. Then it's owned by Shemayim. And you cannot, of course, you can't kill it. Why do you need a special pasuk b'am tacham? Elo b'bali mum. So you're talking about a b'char that has a little bit of a mum. Shlalo ninu. Then it's considered completely the belongings of Yerhani Dachas. Omer Avina lo'olam b'bali mum. We're talking about that it has a mum. What do you burn? An animal that's called an animal. These are different. First of all, their name is different. Nobody calls this an animal. Everybody calls them a bechar, a meiser, etc. They also have different halachas. A bechar meiser you can't sell in a marketplace. You can't weigh it with a litra. It's different. The Shlal Shamayim Ninu. Ememela. Okay. So we're talking about it does have a mum and it's not included in Behemtach. And this Ravina argues on Shmuel. Shmuel, Hakal Korev, Hakal Nifter. So he says a line that we have to understand. Everything is brought on the Mizbeach, and everything is redeemed. What does that mean? My Kamar, Hachi Kamar. Kol Shekarev Kishutam, any animal that you could bring onto the Mizbeach when it's without a mum, without a blemish. V'nivda Kishu Balmum. However, if it doesn't have a blemish, it has a mum, you could redeem it. Mishlolim it. So we say that the Torah says you don't burn, you don't kill this animal in the Irin Dachas. Why? Because it says the word shlala. It's not the Irin Dachas' animal. V'kol shekarev kishutam ve'inin nivda kishu balmum. But any type of animal that you could bring onto the mizbeach when it doesn't have a blemish. But if it has a blemish, you cannot redeem it all. Kigoin, what's a good example? B'chara meiser. Behemta nafka. Then that I learned from the word behemta. In other words, according to Shmuel, only a bechar which is unblemished, you don't burn. But a blemished animal, a bechar, you would burn. According to Ravina, even a balmum, a blemished animal, you don't burn. Rabboisai, have a wonderful day.